What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is sleep. So I've been meaning to make this video for a very long time. I just wanted to make sure that it was comprehensive and it included everything, because if you're anything like me, you have looked at every corner of the internet to try to figure out why you can't sleep, or maybe to improve your sleep quality, figure out why you're having disturbed sleep. Maybe you think you're sleeping, but you're waking up and you're not feeling rested. So hopefully this video helps and you've come to the right place. All right, so in this video, we are going to cover my personal experience with insomnia and sleep-related issues, the different types of insomnia, also what tools, resources, and approaches that worked for me to cure my insomnia. So I have my handy dandy little iPad here. It has all my notes on it, so let's get into it. Okay, so starting with my history with insomnia, I was never a great sleeper. So anyone that knows me, like my good friends, probably from high school on, know that I've always had difficulty sleeping. I was never a morning person, and that's just how I was. When I was a teenager, I slept fine. I was very active. Things weren't as stressful at that time of my life. And something to keep in mind is that our sleep window changes as we age. So you might have remembered that when you were a very young child, you woke up really, really early and your parents were like, God damn it, why is he awake already? And then when you got into your teens, you wanted to just sleep endlessly all the time. And then obviously now you're in adulthood and you're clicking on this video. Kind of in your adulthood, it kind of normalizes and you get that sweet spot in the middle. And then when you get older, it's almost like you revert to childhood in that you kind of need less sleep, and you go to bed earlier and you wake up really early. So some of you may think of your grandparents, you're like, oh my God, my grandparents are up at 4 and 5 in the morning. Like, how do they do that? That's why. Okay, so it wasn't until I got into the corporate world, working in aerospace, manufacturing, and engineering, that my sleep issues started to get worse. So to be fair, I had no concept of sleep hygiene at this time. And when I look back, I'm like, I could have been a lot less stressed and a lot more rested with just adding a routine into my life. But anyways, I was 20 years old and I was living about an hour from work, and work started at 6 a.m. So I had to wake up around 4 a.m. if I was gonna do my hair, my makeup, and get to work on time by 5:59. So that would mean I had to go to bed very early, but since I was in my 20s, I wasn't doing that. And one thing that I realized when I look back at that time was I wasn't getting any morning sunlight, which I'll talk a little bit about in the next chapter of this video. But that is very important for normalizing your circadian rhythm. On top of that, work was stressful, and it only got more and more stressful as I moved higher into corporate America, if you will. When I got into management, I dealt with a lot of anxiety, work anxiety, and that definitely contributed to my sleep issues. But again, this wasn't full-blown insomnia at the time. It was just like, oh my God, I never feel like I get a good sleep. I was always catching up on sleep on the weekends. Yeah. So then I met my boyfriend, who is now my husband, and I moved in with him. And it was so weird because when I was with him, he gave me this sense of calm and peace. And oh my God, I would sleep like a baby. It was insane. I would get into bed and he'd be brushing his teeth or something, and I would be out like asleep, snoring. All right, so getting to when peak insomnia hit for me, I decided to move to another country, to Ireland, and I have another video on that, and I will be making more videos about that. But my husband is Irish, and we decided to move to Ireland. I really wanted to live in another country, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, I just feel like Americans kind of romanticize Europe. Now, I have thoughts on that now that I've lived here for 2 years, but that's for another video. And I was just super, super excited to live this European lifestyle, to travel, just have a new beginning, go into a new work industry. It was just like all these opportunities are going to be there for me in Ireland. But what I didn't realize is that there would be an adjustment period. So I'm pretty much a go with the flow kind of person. So I really did not expect to have any sort of issues come up when moving to Ireland, but I developed terrible insomnia. And I'm talking like I would go 24 hours without sleeping, or maybe like 1 hour of sleep. It was disrupting my husband's sleep. It got to the point where we had to sleep in 2 separate beds, and we didn't have a separate bed, so we were going to the couch, and the couch is too small. It was a mess. And there were mornings that I would wake up and just burst into tears because I was so exhausted. Now, at the time, I was working from home, and that definitely helped a little bit, but obviously I wasn't performing my best at work because I had no energy. I had a constant fear of not going to sleep, of being sleep deprived. I started to get a fear of, what is this doing to my skin, my hair, my hormones, my health? So I was determined to fix this issue that has come up. So obviously, a lack of sleep had an impact on all aspects of my life. It was a terrible time, and it lasted about a year. So before I get into what worked, here's all the things that I tried. Back when I was in California, I did use melatonin pretty regularly, and still I didn't feel really rested. I wasn't getting the deepest sleep, but I had this reliance on melatonin. And here in Ireland, that is a controlled substance, so you can't just go into like your regular store and get Ollie or something that has melatonin in it. You can get valerian, you can get a lot of other herbs that will help with sleep, but you can't get melatonin unless your doctor prescribes it to you. And I really didn't want to rely on pills. Now, that being said, of course, I got desperate, and I have used a sleeping pill, either natural or even like Ativan, and it may work in the beginning, but there's more things going on, and it is possible to not sleep when you're taking these pills. And in my experience, it is even worse because now you're awake and you're like so groggy, but you can't actually fall into a deep sleep. Yeah, it's horrible. So one thing that I did, and I'll talk about why this probably wasn't beneficial, is I took Matthew Walker's sleep masterclass. So I was like, I am going to find out the science behind sleep, and I'm going to figure this out. I watched every single course, and I did learn a lot, and I would tell my husband, I found the smoking gun. This is why I'm not sleeping. And you implement it and you still don't sleep. It's just like, you start to feel like something is wrong with you, and you're like, how come everyone can sleep so easily? And I work so hard at it, but I can't sleep. All right, guys, so I'm sure all of you have looked up the effects of lack of sleep on your body, on your mental health. So I'm not gonna go too much into that in this video. Plus, it is not beneficial for your sleep to look these things up. So I would urge you today to stop Googling. You're done Googling. But I will say this one thing. Sleep is a reparative function, and when you get sleep, there's almost this cleansing process on your brain. So if you've ever noticed when you have arguments or conflicts during the day, whether it's with your boyfriend or a coworker, and you're just like so riled up, and then you go to sleep and you wake up and you're just like, I just don't care about that anymore. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, that's due to your REM sleep healing parts of your brain. So when you don't get that REM sleep, things can get very dark very fast. I noticed I was so emotional during this time, almost like a baby, when they're just really fussy and they just want to go to sleep and all they can do is cry. That's how I felt. Like anything could make me cry during this time. It was just horrible. On top of that, I was canceling plans left and right. Basically, like, let's say I had plans on a Tuesday night to go to dinner with a friend, but Monday night, it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., I'm not sleeping. I would send them a text at like 4:30 saying, hey, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I'm just not feeling well. And they knew exactly what that meant. Another thing I was doing was avoiding alcohol. Alcohol does impact your sleep, and for me still, I don't like to drink alcohol, especially like 2 hours before bed. But still, I was avoiding any bit of alcohol at all. I was eating very healthy. I was doing everything I thought I needed to do. I was also working out every single morning to try to exhaust myself. Now, obviously, it got to the point where the sleep was so bad that I couldn't even work out. Also, it is kind of bright in here, but when I close the blinds completely, it's too dark. So anyways, all right, guys, so before we get into how I fixed all of these issues, let's talk about the different types of insomnia. So the first type of insomnia is acute insomnia. So this can last over a period of days, weeks, up to a month, but no longer. So it's very short, it's temporary. It could be related to your environment, jet lag. I think all of us have experienced this type of insomnia at some point in our life. Maybe it's a particularly hot summer and you don't have an air conditioner. So, for a week, you're like, oh my God, I just didn't get any sleep. That would be acute insomnia. Then you have chronic insomnia, which is what I was blessed with. And that is 6 months or longer. There's also subcategories of chronic insomnia, and those are onset insomnia, which is the inability to fall asleep. Then you have maintenance insomnia, which is the inability to stay asleep. So this may be accompanied by several awakenings during the night. There's early awakening insomnia. So this is when you consistently wake up before your desired wake time. So let's say your alarm is set for 6, but every day you wake up at 4:30, and you just can't help it, even though you fall asleep fine and you stay asleep. This is a form of insomnia. And I know my friends and family, I've heard this from them before, and I'm like, that's insomnia and you can fix that, but I'm not gonna push all this stuff on everybody at once. If they're not asking for help, then I'm not gonna just give it. That's my new motto, because I read so much stuff about hormone health, sleep health, skin health, that guys, I'm a wealth of knowledge, honestly. But, some people are just like, let me do it my way. The some people I'm talking about is my husband, Kieran, okay? I'm just like, hey, if you don't want to have any vegetables with that meal, I'm okay with that. You know what? You do that. Okay, and then you have mixed insomnia, which is a combination of all of them, which is probably the insomnia type that I had. And then lastly, you have secondary insomnia, which is when your insomnia is caused by another primary health issue. So this could be digestive issues, chronic pain, chronic illness, mental health. Now, that being said, there's a lot of research showing that there is a bi-directional relationship with these other health issues and insomnia. So, for example, anxiety. Does anxiety cause insomnia, or does insomnia cause anxiety? Or are they causing, it's all intertwined, which is why it's really important to have a holistic view of health and try to take care of your whole body, including your mental health. All right, so what did I do to fix these issues? CBT-I. All right, and before you click off this video and say, oh, I've already read about CBT-I, I know the guidelines, I did that, it's just sleep hygiene, I tried to do it myself, didn't work. Trust me, I did the same thing, and it wasn't until I saw a practitioner that I really understood why I was having insomnia, and it actually gave me results. So I discovered this book on Amazon. It's called Quiet Your Mind and Get to Sleep: Solutions to Insomnia for Those with Depression, Anxiety, or Chronic Pain. I was like, wait a minute, do I have depression? What's going on? In this book, they detail step by step what you need to do to follow the CBT-I guidelines. And I do recommend it for anybody having sleep issues, although I do think working with a practitioner is critical. But also in the book, there's a couple chapters talking about how mental health impacts our sleep. And it was in ways that I never really thought. When I started to think about my current day-to-day well-being, mental health-wise, I was like, maybe I'm not in a great place right now. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, I had moved to Ireland. This was my first time living in another country, living away from friends and family. I missed my dad and my brother. It was my first time experiencing a very cold, wet, dark winter. And just in general, Ireland can be a bit dark and gloomy. So I was definitely dealing with some seasonal depression. I was working from home full time, which initially would have been like a dream for me, but I think it would have been better for me to be going into office when I'm in a new country and needing to meet new people and socialize and all these things. And I mean, let's be real. I knew my mental health was struggling because I wasn't getting sleep, but I didn't realize that I wasn't getting sleep because of my mental health. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So that got me thinking, and why I ultimately decided to reach out to a therapist. Now, I had gone to a traditional talk therapist before here in Ireland, and she was pretty good, but I never felt like, I don't know, like I had much progress or I felt much different. I'd go for a couple weeks, or a couple months and say, oh, wow, it's nice to talk to somebody. But overall, if I compare myself now to a couple months ago, I feel like the same person. So I definitely was skeptical about going to a practitioner, but honestly, it was the best thing I could have done. He understood me even outside of the sleep issues. It was just so interesting. And there is definitely patterns in the way that we think. And when I say we, I mean people who struggle with sleep issues. So it doesn't necessarily need to be anxiety or depression. It could be perfectionism, being self-critical, being hard on oneself. These sorts of things are more prominent in people that have sleep issues. So I don't know, I was just like, he gets me. So I will leave his details down below. His name is Motty Varghese. He is here in Ireland, but he may do international calls, but there are several CBT-I therapists if you're in the United States to reach out to. So the first thing that my practitioner did was get me on a sleep plan, and he did this by analyzing how much sleep I was getting at that time. Many of you may be familiar with this, but you won't get sleep for day 1, day 2, day 3, but then day 4 you get like the best sleep ever because you are so sleep deprived. And then maybe you'll get a second day of good sleep and you're like, okay, finally I'm sleeping again. But then it all comes back. So when you take a 1 to 2 week analysis of the times that you're waking and going to sleep and you average all that sleep out, I was getting 5.5 hours of sleep on average. So it was critical that part of my sleep plan included me being in bed for only 6 hours. So at first you're like, oh my God, I can only stay in bed for 6 hours. How am I going to do that? I'm already not getting enough sleep, and now you're ripping me out of bed even sooner. But this is probably the main behavioral tactic for insomnia treatment. So my schedule, since I can only be in bed for 6 hours and I wanted to wake up at 6:30 a.m., so I had to go to bed every night at 12:30. And what I started to notice, and I noticed this before, is when I'm on the couch, with my husband, I'm so relaxed, I'm falling asleep. It's crazy. I'm like, I would have just slept on the couch if it was more comfortable and none of this would have been an issue. But I am dead asleep, like, and then I get into bed and I'm wide awake. Eyes are open, my heart is racing, I'm tossing, I'm turning. And every hour that you're not going to sleep, you're getting more and more stressed, you're staying in bed, just freaking out. And what you're doing by staying in bed through these negative emotions is you're training your brain to associate your pillow, your blankets, your bedroom with stress. Meanwhile, on the couch, I have associated it with, peace and calm, spending time with my husband, and apparently sleepiness because I would fall asleep on the couch. So on top of only being in bed for 6 hours, anytime that you wake up for more than 10 minutes, you have to get out of bed. So in the beginning, these two together are torture because you're definitely not going to fall asleep right away. It's almost like I was struggling to stay awake on the couch. I'm like, I am so tired. And your therapist will say, well, this is good because you actually have the ability to sleep. Now we just need to train your brain to sleep in your bed and sleep the entire duration of the night. So they talked about Pavlov's dog theory. So what is Pavlov's dog theory? Basically, they would ring a bell and give a dog a treat, ring a bell, give a dog a treat, and so on. They were training the dog's brain that every time you rang a bell, he would get a treat. But then they would ring the bell and not give the treat, and they would notice that the dog would still react as if the treat was there. He would salivate, he would get excited. So in this case, you have trained your brain in a way to associate the bed with negativity. And the good thing is you can reverse that. So I would get out of bed multiple times a night. It's 12:30. Okay, it's 12:45. I'm not asleep. I'm back on the couch. It's 1:15. I'm sleepy. I'm back in bed. Okay, I'm not asleep yet. I'm out of bed. Till you're going back and forth. It's 3 a.m. and you finally fall asleep and you have to wake up at 6 a.m. It's horrible. And on the couch, you can't just go to sleep. You have to stay awake. So I had coloring books, I had a journal, I'd just be out there coloring, just doing anything to just relax. You don't want to be working out or doing something that's going to raise your cortisol, but you just want to kind of stay awake and do something that's going to calm you. You can have a cup of tea and then go back to bed. Now, after a week and a half of this, you will sleep. It's great. And it got to the point where I would get in bed at 12:30 and I would be asleep by 12:35, which is something that I was never able to do, even back before I had terrible insomnia. I always took, 45 minutes or something to fall asleep. So I'd fall asleep at 12:35 and I'd wake up right when my alarm came off. I was like, oh my God. And at that point, just getting 6 hours of good quality deep sleep, I was like, I feel amazing. Like, I don't even need 8 hours. I just need good quality sleep. And something that you'll realize if you have the other types of insomnia, like frequent awakenings, or you're waking up too early, this sort of sleep restriction will help you regulate your sleep schedule in that your deepest hours of sleep are at the right times and you'll feel more rested. Now, as we progress and I'm doing well, I'm getting 6, 5.5, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 5, and you will have, of course, those off nights. And that's why you work with a practitioner and they remind you and they look through all the data to make sure, yes, this is normal, you're on track, don't worry about this, just keep going. So after you're getting a consistent 6 hours of sleep, it gets bumped to 6 hours and 15 minutes, and then 6.5 hours, and then 7 hours. Next thing you know, it's like, wow, I'm sleeping consistently 7 hours. But again, you're gonna have nights where you, I guess, relapse, you could say, but it's not a full relapse because you get back into it, and you're training your brain again, you're training your body again to sleep as the body is designed to do. So those are the two concrete behavioral activities you're going to do in the program that are going to yield the most results, but that is also paired with your other sleep hygiene activities, which you're probably more familiar with. No eating 2 hours before bed, no alcohol before bed, sleeping in a dark and cool room, limiting caffeine consumption. So really, especially if you have insomnia, but also if you're someone who's kind of jittery and has anxiety or anything like that, or hormone issues, you want to limit yourself to 1 coffee in the morning and nothing after 12 p.m. Now, for me personally, I have cut out coffee entirely, and it wasn't even because of insomnia. I actually kept it in during my insomnia program because my therapist told me that it's fine to have 1 cup of coffee a day. That's not why you're not sleeping. But I had some teeth grinding and it always makes me very jittery, and I was working on my gut health and all these things. So for me, as someone who has a history of high cortisol, I just don't drink coffee like that anymore. Occasionally I will have it because it's so good. Like on the weekends, I'll have a flat white or something, but my day-to-day, I stick to green tea. And then lastly, limiting exposure to blue light or electronics at night. So I actually bought these Bluelight glasses, and these are the one kind of like odd thing that I still use, because when you're in the insomnia therapy, they make it clear that you shouldn't need any gadgets or incense or anything to help you sleep, weighted blankets. Sleep is a natural part of our biology. It's just like breathing or eating. Like when you start to think of it like that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I should be able to go to sleep. Yeah, and the other thing is you don't want to go to bed when you're not sleepy. That's something else I learned. I also had this pressure of like, okay, I need to get 8 hours of sleep, so it's 10 p.m. I better get in bed because I have to wake up at 6. Now I'm like, if I'm not sleepy, then I'm going to go to bed at 11 and I'll wake up at 6. Like, wake up at the same time every day is very, very important. And when you let yourself do that, you develop a healthy sleep drive. And sleep drive is what helps you fall asleep. And wakefulness is what leads to sleep drive. So you want to stay awake and active during the day to build that sleep drive, and you don't want to put so much pressure on yourself to get in bed when you're not sleepy. So that gets me into the second part of the therapy, which is cognitive. And it starts with a 30-item questionnaire to address your sleep or insomnia related cognitions. And the point of that is to assess how many of your beliefs are dysfunctional to your sleep. So earlier in the video, I said stop looking up, the effects of sleep on your health, because it's actually causing you more stress and anxiety, which is the exact reason you can't sleep. I know it sounds simple. It's kind of like I'm back in the day, like I'm married now, but if my period was late and I was like, oh my God, am I pregnant? And you start stressing and then your period doesn't come. And everybody's like, stop stressing about it, because then your period's not going to come even longer. And then the moment you relax or you just like go for a workout or you stop thinking about the period, the period comes. It's kind of like that with sleep. One is I'll never sleep. Not only is it very negative mentality, but it's just simply not true. You will fall asleep, and you'll find out when you start to do this sleep restriction. The other is attributing health issues to your sleep. So I was convinced that I had a ailment or some sort of health issue that was unique that was causing me not to sleep. And I think a lot of people feel this way, especially if you're a woman. The first thing you think of is your hormones. Now, that being said, I have had sleep-related issues due to hormones. During my PMS, I would be awake, tossing and turning for like 2 to 3 nights, and then my period would come and I would just sleep like a baby. So this is something that my therapist touched on. He's like, this is not why you're not sleeping, but yes, women tend to have more sleep-related issues or not as deep sleep due to their hormone fluctuations. But again, this is not why I'm going 1, 2, 3 days getting 2 hours, 1 hour of sleep. Like, that's just not why it is. And I am going to make a separate video on how I tackled hormone imbalance, because I have struggled with that at different phases of my life. So stay tuned for that. And then lastly, like I mentioned, is perfectionism. One, dysfunctional activity I guess I was doing was tracking my sleep on my watch. So I would go to bed, I'd be like, beep, time to sleep. And I wouldn't go to sleep. And then I would wake up and I would just be pissed off when I didn't get enough sleep. And my therapist said this is a problem for a few reasons. 1, it's only stressing you out even more. 2, you're thinking about sleep too much. The goal is you want to not think about sleep. You want to go on with your daily life and not think about sleep until it's bedtime. So that includes not canceling on your friends. So I had to power through. Anytime I wanted to cancel my friends due to lack of sleep, I'm like, I'm getting out there. And you'd be surprised. You will function. What I'm saying is somehow you do it. And it does help to take your mind off of this issue that you're having and then ultimately get you closer to healing your insomnia. The other part is he said these watches aren't really accurate. And so he showed tons of research on it. And he's like, the way you know if you slept well is if you wake up feeling rested. Point, period, blank. So I actually don't have a heavy reliance on my watch anymore. I used to track my calories and stuff. And for what reason, I don't know. It wasn't even like I'm a calorie counter when I eat food and stuff like that. It was just like, okay, I'm getting enough daily movement today. But now I really just use it because you can easily see the weather, and I can see here in Ireland if it's going to be raining in the next hour or two. But otherwise, I don't use my watch strictly for fitness or sleep anymore. And then the last thing is just being more relaxed, which will help with depression or anxiety if you do have these things. But also you could not have depression but still be kind of a highly strung person, and that's going to impact your sleep. So the 3 things that he recommended, 1 was journaling. So I was journaling every night during the program. Now I just journal when I feel like I have a lot of thoughts on my mind, but it really does help to turn your brain off before bed, and it's meditative, and it really is important just for your health and well-being. And there's a lot of research right now coming out about how your gut and your mind are connected. That's another example. A bad gut is going to give you bad thoughts, and bad thoughts are going to give you a bad gut. It's just The other thing was body scanning. So this is a type of meditation. You could probably look it up. It's also something that people use to heal their nervous system. And it's really easy. It takes 3 minutes. It's bizarre because some people like myself, if it takes 3 minutes, to me, that means it's just pointless, but it's just not true. It's very powerful, these activities. And I've learned to start appreciating the moments in between and, not having to go all or nothing on everything all the time. And then lastly is yoga. I love yoga. It's always given me such a calm feeling afterwards. It really does help to reduce cortisol. So I was doing yoga, but like I said, this is one of the things that Motty was like, do yoga if you want to do yoga, but don't have this dysfunctional belief that I have to do the yoga to fall asleep tonight. If I don't do my yoga, I'm not going to sleep. That's not what you want to do, and that's what you want to get away from. So now I do incorporate yoga at least once a week. And honestly, if you're doing yoga, do it in the evening or do it in the morning if you want. But if you're doing yoga and you do it in the evening, I'm telling you, it does help you sleep so much deeper. It's the best. And lastly, the program for me was 4 weeks. I think some other ones are 6 or 8 weeks, but you're not going to be perfect right away. You're going to go from having 5 sleepless nights a week to 3 to 1 to, hey, you know, I've slept good for 3 weeks, but then you have, you know, a bad night. And then it's like once every few months. And then you might get jet lagged or something might have you relapse, but you learn these new tools that will get you back on track. So that is something that happened to me. I was sleeping so good and I was so happy. You have no idea. Like, I text my dad throughout all of this, like, me and my dad are very close, and he was just like, I'm so happy that you got this under control. Like, this guy Motty, we owe him our weight in gold. Like, it's just, love Motty. But I ended up going to California for our wedding. My husband and I, well, technically we were already married, but we were having our celebration after COVID. So that's another video that I'll do. But anyways, I go to California, I sleep like a baby, and then I come back to Ireland and my insomnia comes back. Oh, it was horrible. And I actually messaged Motty and I had 1, maybe 2 sessions with him. I actually think I only had 1 session with him. And just to kind of get me back on track. And again, I'm telling you, it helps to have a trusted therapist that you can work with through this. All right, guys, so I really hope that this helped you, and my thoughts are with all of you crazy little insomniacs, because I know how terrible it is, and you will get through this. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, or you can email me. I know a few of you have emailed me before. You can find me on Instagram, send me a DM, whatever you prefer. I really wish you some sweet dreams coming soon, and just know that this is one small period of your life and you will get through it and get on the other side. All right, see ya.